lost at some point, all right? Some of us get physically lost. You get lost in your schoolwork. Being lost is kind of the thing that we do nowadays. I mean, it's something that we do. We normally do. One time I was running, and I decided to run a little bit more than I normally did. So I turned down a road and ended up 45 minutes away from my house, and I don't even know how I got there. So I had to use GPS to get me back to my house. I'm like, what the heck? It was crazy. I don't even know what happened. We get lost. Being lost is something that just happens to us, right? And it's kind of fun to tell the stories now, to kind of talk about how we got lost and laugh about it. I remember whenever I was a kid, I got lost at Silver Dollar City one time, and at the time I was scared out of my mind, but now I can look back and laugh about it. And, when we lost Chance at Disney World, we can look back now and laugh about it, but at the time it was not funny. It's pretty scary when we get lost, isn't it? Especially when you're young. When you're in a place that you don't know, it can be really scary. Whether you're wandered away from your parents, whether you've taken a wrong turn, or whether you just lost track of the crowd that you're supposed to be with, it can be scary when you realize that you're not sure where you're supposed to be. Or who you can even ask for help. Because especially nowadays, you never know who you can even talk to. I mean, if you go to the wrong person as a little kid and say, I'm lost, there's no telling what's going to happen. It's scary when we're lost. For the next couple of weeks, we're going to talk about ways that we get lost. And how we can help others whenever they get lost. And how we can help and how we can be found again. And we're going to kind of equate that to our faith and to our life in general with Christ, and how there are a lot of different reasons of why we feel lost sometimes. Sometimes we can feel lost mentally, emotionally. We feel like we're just in this place where no one knows what we're going through. No one cares about us. We get this kind of emotional feeling of being lost sometimes, and we're going to talk a little bit about that over this next couple of weeks. We were created to be close to God. We were created not to be lost. We were created to be close to God, and He is the God who made us, the God who loves us. But some of us don't really know that Creator yet. Some of us may know Jesus, but that we wandered away from Him. Maybe we know about Him, maybe we've heard about Him, we don't really know Him very well. We don't really have that relationship with Him. Maybe some of us have entered into a relationship with Him, but have kind of wandered away. Just like when you're in the Walmart or in the amusement parks, you get distracted. Probably one of the number one reasons kids get lost in amusement parks and stores is because they get distracted. They're walking along and they're like, that's pretty. And they just keep on going over this way while the rest of your crowd is going over here, right? And that's the same way in our life. Whenever we are going through our life, living our life with Jesus, and then we get distracted by all of the other stuff, all of this pretty stuff the world has to offer, and we walk away. Some of us, in all of these situations, no matter what reason is that we're lost, no matter how physically, emotionally, mentally, maybe you don't know Jesus, maybe you know Him, but you don't have a relationship with Him, maybe you have that relationship but you've wandered away. Whatever that reason is, it can feel pretty scary to be lost sometimes. We're all, and even in those situations where we ask ourselves, the question that people have been trying to answer forever is, what's the meaning of life? Why are we here? And those questions can't be answered if we're lost if we're separated from our Creator. When you have to go somewhere, but you don't know what you're doing, whenever you have to go to a friend's house or have to go to a store or go somewhere and you don't know how to get there, what do? GPS. You pull up your handy-dandy little phone, either Google Maps or Apple Maps or whatever maps you have, and type in the what? The address. and it gives you a detailed list on how to get there, right? I mean, it will help you avoid roads that are being worked on and help you avoid traffic. It will help you avoid different dangers that are in the road. Nowadays, they will even come up and say there's a speed trap ahead, so it'll even help you avoid getting a ticket when you're on the road. Or it'll pop up and say there's an accident ahead. So when there's obstructions in the road, every now and then it'll be like, I found a faster route. Do you want to take it? So it'll help you get to where you're going faster. Yes, sir.
Your GPS holds you to go through a field.
Huh?
Your GPS holds you to go through a field.
Yeah, sometimes it doesn't know. It's getting better though. Sometimes the GPS isn't always caught up, but the GPS says things are really cool. It automatically, if you turn wrong, it will automatically send you a different direction. Sometimes it's kind of silly and tells you to turn around when you can just go a different direction, but it automatically corrects and reroutes you.
Yeah, one time one of the little things led right through a forest.
Yeah.
Driving through a forest, looking around.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy when it does that, but wouldn't it be nice to have some kind of an app like that kind of did that for our life, right? To where sometimes like it would tell us exactly what decision to make whenever we made it. It would help us avoid bad situations. It would give us a heads up whenever danger's in front of us. It would kind of let us peek into the future. In the maps you can kind of hit the button, it'll show you where the next turn is, right? Wouldn't it be cool if we had an app where we can just kind of hit the button and it'll show us what our next decision is, where that's going to lead, kind of let us to see what's going to happen next, or automatically tell us what to do whenever we made a bad decision. Wouldn't that be cool? That'd be really neat. That'd be really neat, right? Whenever we mess up, it would automatically, this is what you need to do to fix the decision that you made. And wouldn't that be nice if that app told us how to live, live out our faith with God? Wouldn't that be really cool to just kind of have an app that just kind of helped to guide you in all of those circumstances, kind of like GPS does? But unfortunately, we don't have an app for that, but we do have a book for that. You guys are all of you guys are too young, except for some of these adults. But back in the day, if you were going on a long trip and you didn't know where you were going, you had to pull out a map. I should have went and bought one, but I don't even know if you can buy it anymore. But you get these big maps, and once you unfold it, you can never fold it again. I don't know. It's just once you unfold that map, it'll never go back the way it's supposed to go. And so you have to pull that out. You have to pick, this is where we're going, and then you kind of have to look at all the different roads, and then somebody has to sit there in the driver's seat saying, all right, you have to turn at this road up here and this road up here, and they have to be on par, because if they miss it, you don't know, and then you have to reroute yourself and try to, and sometimes if you're going really far, you have to get a driver's almanac, and it's crazy. Stephanie and I took a trip one time. We were living in Missouri, but we actually went to Orlando to Disney World for the very first time, where we lost Chance. And we were driving. This was before we had GPS and all this cool stuff. So we're driving around Orlando. We get to I don't know how we found our hotel, but we found our hotel, and we're going to go to Walmart, because we had like a condo thing. So we went to Walmart to get some food for the condo, so we didn't have to go out to eat and stuff. And so we went to Walmart, and then we couldn't find our way back to the condo, and we drove around for hours trying to find this map. I'm like, I don't even know which way is north anymore. I'm so turned around. It was insane. But the cool thing is about God gave us a book that we can look at and we can read and we can go through. Sometimes you feel as though you're wandering. Sometimes you kind of get this idea that you're wandering away from God, but you're not really sure how or why, right? We kind of get that when we're driving. Sometimes you're like, I don't even know how I got to where I'm at. Yes, sir. A condo. It's kind of like a hotel, but bigger.
It's an apartment.
Yeah, it's like a little apartment. So maybe it seems like yesterday you had it all together. Everything was going right, and then you wake up and everything just falls apart. Anybody ever had that happen? everything's going good, and then everything just falls apart. Yeah, sometimes that's what happens. So other times you might even feel like you're wandering away from your faith, and no one even notices you. Maybe you feel like no one notices, nobody cares. If I didn't go to church, no one would even care I wasn't there. Or if I didn't, God's too busy. He doesn't care if I pray or read the Bible. We kind of get these ideas in our head. Satan tries to lie to us and put these ideas in our head to help us get lost. Satan is really good at helping us get lost. But if you feel far from God for whatever reason, you might find yourself wandering around, thinking, maybe, did I fail God, or did God fail me, or and what can I do? What did I do to even get here? Is it even possible to get out of here? Sometimes we get to this place where we think, well, I messed up so bad, I'm never going to be found again. Or, God, no one's even looking for me. And for the next couple of weeks, we're going to look at that. And we're going to be in chapter 15 of the book of Luke. So once you guys go ahead and turn to Luke chapter 15. And we're going to go through this book over the next 4 weeks and look at that right there. And Jesus actually tells a parable or a story that kind of just shows how wrong we are when we get the idea that nobody cares and no one's looking for us. This chapter recounts a series of stories that Jesus tells about things that were lost and then found again. Each story communicates a different and important truth. These stories. Now it's important to know. Does anybody know what a parable is?
A what?
A parable. What's a parable?
It's like an old story or it's kind of like an old backwards.
Kind of, yeah.
It's a short story to tell a point or something along those lines.
Yeah, it's like a short story. Yeah, it's a story that Jesus told her. It's a story that it's a story that's not true, but it's meant to reveal a truth. So Jesus is telling a non-true story to reveal a true thing about God and about heaven. Okay, so a parable, while the things in the story didn't happen, but he's saying this is what God is like, or this is what heaven is like. Okay, it's an earthly story that reveals a heavenly truth. Okay, so this story, this parable, I lost my place. They communicate different and important truths. And these stories aren't historical stories, so they're not historical facts, but these parables, the story that Jesus made up and told to each other to teach us something that is incredibly truthful and very important in our lives, okay? So we're going to be in Luke chapter 15. We're going to read verses 1 through 7.
Now all the tax collectors and the sinners were coming near him to listen to him. Both the Pharisees and the scribes began to grumble, saying, "This man receives sinners and eats with them." So he told them to parable, saying, "What man among you, if he has a hundred sheep and has lost one of them, does not leave the 99 in the open pasture and go after the one which is lost until he finds it? When he has found it, he lays it on his shoulders, rejoicing. And when he comes home, he calls together his friends and his neighbors, saying to them, 'Rejoice with me, for I have found my sheep which was lost.' I tell you that in the same way there will be more joy in heaven over one sinner who repents than over 99 righteous persons who need no representation."
So, the Pharisees of Jesus' day, they were the religious leaders. They were kind of like the priests, the hierarchy of the Jewish faith. They were super focused on following God's law. Now, anybody ever heard of the Ten Commandments? Yeah, so God's law is so much bigger than just the Ten Commandments. There's like hundreds of laws. Like whenever Moses led the people out of Egypt, God gave him the Ten Commandments, but God also gave him tons of other laws and other rules to follow that the Jewish people had to follow. And the Pharisees, they were super focused. They wanted to make sure that they got everything right. They were so focused that they actually started making their own rules to go along with those to make sure that people were so focused on that. They were so focused on following Scripture that they kind of lost the whole relationship idea with God. So, they wanted to follow God's law, but they kind of lost the relationship there. The laws were given by God to help God's people stay healthy and stay safe and stay close to God. And these laws, they helped people who not to get lost. But the Pharisees had taken it way too far. They were way too caught up in the rules and kind of the legality of all of the stuff. And they lost that. They became more self-righteous and less caring and loving. And the Pharisees were obsessed with people who they believed they were, there were people who they believed they were sinners, and they weren't worthy, and they weren't good enough. They were kind of obsessed with staying away from those people, making those kind of people feel bad, negative about themselves. But Jesus often made the Pharisees really mad because Jesus loved those people. Jesus would hang out with those people. Jesus would hang out with the people that the Pharisees would call sinners. And he would hang out with them and he would encourage them and teach them and tell them about God and how they could follow him. And the Pharisees always seemed to be breaking to the Pharisees, Jesus seemed to always be breaking God's rules because he would do things like heal people on the Sabbath day. And so the Sabbath day was a day that was supposed to be a day of rest, and Jesus would heal people, and the Pharisees were so strict on the rules that they wouldn't even let people they were like, you can't even heal anybody on the Sabbath because that's considered working. And Jesus was so much, Jesus loved people so much that he was healing. We're not going to get into the Sabbath and all of that stuff, but they were so stuck on the rules that they lost focus on the people. And Jesus was focused on the people. Instead of dismissing the Pharisees as just being a bunch of jerks and just forgetting about it and say, hey, worry about yourself, Jesus took the time to tell them these three stories. So the Pharisees were being kind of mean to Jesus, and Jesus could have just ignored them and went about their day, but Jesus is like, you know what, I want to teach you something. And so he tells these stories. And the first is one about a missing sheep. You guys are probably like, I don't know anything about sheep, right? Who knows about sheep? Not very. Yeah, they make really comfortable stuff to make clothes out of, right? That's about it. Sheep are very much. They can't really take care of themselves a whole lot. All right, hold on. The sheep can't really take care of themselves. They need someone to be there with them. So Jesus tells this parable, and whenever he's telling this parable, he's telling it to people who know about sheep, because herding sheep and taking care of sheep back then was a big deal. Everybody knew about sheep. Sheep were important to the Jewish community. So whenever Jesus was talking about this, people knew what he was saying. And he says in verse 4, it says, what man among you who have 100 sheep and lose one of them, do not leave the 99 in the open field to go after that lost one until he finds it? Sheep were expensive. They were worth a lot of money. And that shepherd is going to go find that sheep because it's his livelihood. It says when he is found, he joyfully puts it on his shoulder and comes home. He calls his friends and neighbors together, saying to them, rejoice with me because I have found my lost sheep. I tell you, in the same way, there will be more joy in heaven over one sinner who repents than over 99 righteous people who don't need repentance. We don't know how, we don't know how the sheep wandered away. You know, we don't know if it saw something shiny and went over, and went over there. We don't know, maybe it got stuck in a thorn bush and the other sheep left it. We don't know what happened. We don't know how the sheep got lost, but we know the sheep got lost, right? No matter which way what happened, the sheep was lost, and then the sheep needed to be found. Imagine how difficult it would be to find a lost sheep in a huge desert. Now, this isn't just some flat desert. This is a big desert with hills and steep valleys and cliffs. It would take a lot of time and a lot of effort to find a sheep in this desert. Chance. There you go. It would take a while to find a sheep in there, wouldn't it?
No, because you go to the highest point.
Even at the highest point, though, because you can't see over the next points. You can't see in the valley. You can't see down in the crevices. There's so many different little points out there that it's just like, how are you going to find it? And then if you do see it from far away, by the time you get to it, maybe it's left. It would not be easy. It would not be an easy task. It would be something very hard to do. But even though the shepherd in Jesus' story had 100 sheep to take care of, he noticed. He noticed when one of them was not there. Now, I don't know if you've seen sheep before, but they don't look very different from each other. They're pretty similar looking, right? But this shepherd, when he looked out on his sheep, he noticed. He knew his sheep, and he knew one was not there. He noticed when his sheep were gone. And he went out and searched. He went through all of that difficult thing until he found it. And he never gave up, and he found that sheep. And Jesus said that the shepherd didn't go and yell at him and hit him with a whip and tell him how done he is for running off. The shepherd picked the sheep up and carried him home. The shepherd didn't even make the sheep walk home. He carried him home. He was so excited that he found that sheep. The shepherd loved the sheep and carried the sheep home. So, what does this parable mean? Does anybody know what this parable means? What?
It means no matter how lost you are, Jesus always finds a way to save you.
Ooh, I don't even need to be up here. That's exactly it. See, Jesus is the shepherd. We're the sheep. We're the ones that get lost, right? We're the ones that get lost. We get distracted by all the pretty things of this world, all of the false stuff out there that Satan throws up there that tells us all this stuff that Satan says, hey, you need all of these things. This stuff is important. This is going to make you happy. We get distracted by all of that stuff, and we start to follow that. But Jesus is our good shepherd, and he notices whenever we're not there.